Catch him on Good Morning Football. It's Isaiah Stanback joining us now on the Emerald Queen Casino Sportsbook Hotline. Isaiah, how's it going?
All is well. How are y'all doing?
We're good. It's beautiful here in Seattle. It's sunny, and the Seahawks kind of have a fresh new start with 11 new rookies here, not included, obviously, undrafted guys. And I am going to start with maybe just you personally, your favorite or most intriguing pick from Seattle's draft class that has you wondering how that might be going.
Of course, it's going to be the Milroe. I had an opportunity to speak with him about a month ago back on GMFB, and I just thought that he was a very mature, very confident young man. Obviously has an amazing skill set that you cannot teach. You see the work ethic that he's already putting in terms of trying to learn and study players who possess abilities that he needs to develop. And I think he shows his willingness to work there. I'm just excited about the fact that Seattle not only has somebody for the now, but has somebody for the future also.
Isaiah, when you were a dual threat quarterback in college, and when you were, trying to play, quarterback and then also have a run threat, how much time did you kind of spend working on your run game in addition to the pass game? Kind of like how Milroe right now, they really want him to emphasize his passing game in practice. How much time did you kind of divvy up between the two phases of your game?
I mean, whenever you have those natural abilities, those aren't things that you have to work on. The one thing that I did work on in regards to my running was just my overarching speed. So when I was at the University of Washington, once Coach Willingham came in my junior year, he allowed for me to play two sports. So at that point, I went and ran for the sprint team. I ran UW, Coach Lamont Vaughn at the time. And I made a commitment to him to get me faster. He took my 100 time down from an 11.2 down to a 10.4, essentially dropping my 40 time down to a 4.3. And at that point, what I was already naturally great at, at that point I felt invincible. So all my time and efforts really went to the film ring. It really went to trying to improve upon becoming a more efficient, more confident passer, being able to sit in the pocket, decipher what the coverages were, and having the confidence to know how to work through my progressions. And then if things broke down or if things weren't there, then I knew that I had my abilities in my hip pocket to be able to utilize it anytime.
Isaiah, before we get to the ways in which Jalen does need to take a step forward as a passer, I find it really interesting to kind of contrast how the NFL world talks about Jalen and mobile quarterbacks now compared to even 10, 11, 12 years ago. Obviously, you know this, right? I don't like to think of the three of us as being old by any means, but we're all within like the same age range. And people have been, just so you know, locally talking so much about 2012 when Russ was coming out. And I just found myself thinking, man, Russ was actually like a fairly not finished product in the NFL, but like a pretty good passer. But mobile quarterbacks were all grouped together, talked about in the same way, seen as deeply unfinished products. And there are all kinds of layers to, why mobile quarterbacks were seen that way. But I'm just thinking now of the way that Jalen is seen as like, wow, how exciting. Look at all the weapons he has. It feels like, Isaiah, a different world.
A completely different world. No, at the time that I was coming up, obviously, there was a handful of guys that were out there doing it and that were really the trendsetters at the time. Mike Vick, McNabb, McNair, Vince Young was a little bit ahead of me. So guys were doing it, but it still wasn't fully accepted. And it actually was kind of, at the time, I don't want to say it was looked down upon, but you were looked at as more of an athlete than you were as a quarterback just because you possessed the ability to do more than just sit back in the pocket. So it was actually kind of a gift and a curse type of deal at that time. Now it's being, highly praised, and those abilities are being valued. And I love every bit of it. I wish they would have been valued a little bit more when I was playing, but no, these guys are bigger, faster, stronger. Athleticism's out of this world. I just love the fact that organizations are now embracing the aspect of these gifts and talents that they're given.
I do too, and we've seen such a great evolution of football and amazing play in general, from treating mobile quarterbacks as like, oh, it's just an extra skill set as opposed to purely a limitation. I think it's evolved the way that we just talk about players as well in such an awesome way. That being said, Jalen has gotten knocks as a passer, and I think was seen as maybe even taking a little step back towards the end of his career with Alabama. So from your point of view, Isaiah, where would you like to see him evolve in terms of just from the pocket?
Yeah, just learn. I think the biggest thing when you get to the NFL I know when obviously I got drafted as a receiver to Dallas, but when I left Dallas, I actually got the call from Bill Belichick to go play quarterback in New England. So I was in the quarterback room with Tom Brady, and I was backing him up as a number 3 quarterback there. And I think the biggest thing that I took away from that was just preparation. And, you thought that you might have known a lot when you were in college, but when you got to the league, there's levels, right? I tell everybody there's levels to everything in every industry. And the NFL is so complex, and these defenses are so challenging. And you really have to understand every aspect of it, from the defensive fronts to the second level to the guys at the secondary, being able to identify where the safeties are. You start looking at little details like leverage. Is the cornerback inside? Is he head up? Is he fading inside? Like, what are all those alignments? Like, those are the things that are really going to tip you off to help you start really narrowing down what is the possibility of whatever coverage I may be facing on this particular play. And I think the more studying that you can do to give yourself that heads up and give yourself that advantage, the easier the game becomes, the easier it is to decipher things. And now all of a sudden you can start focusing on your guys instead of being so focused on what the other team is doing.
Isaiah, the Seahawks have made a big change in philosophy on offense this offseason, moving on from Ryan Grubb and then bringing in Clint Kubiak. They draft a fullback in the 5th round. They take a running back in the 7th. What do you make of the Seahawks' recommitment to the run under Mike Macdonald?
It makes sense. I mean, Mike Macdonald's a defensive coach. So most defensive coaches like keeping the ball on the ground and cherishing the possession. So obviously they were trying to do the, air it out type deal last year. That didn't work. So now you're getting to what most defensive coordinators really want to do, which is, hey, if we get the ball in the hands of our offense, run the clock off. I don't want my defense on the field. When they are on the field, I don't want them on the field for no more than 55, 60 snaps. Limit the opportunities that the opposing offense has. And the best way to do that is to win the time of possession. The most efficient way to win time of possession, run the ball. So that's what you're seeing now as a commitment to that. It's amazing that they were able to get Clint Kubiak because he is a very creative coordinator, obviously offensive coordinator. And I think that the commitment back to the offensive line is huge because the last time we saw the Seahawks in the limelight, obviously when we're going back-to-back Super Bowls was when they had the highest payroll for the offensive line. Mm-hmm. Their payroll was at the top of the league for that particular position group. So I like to see them now making that commitment with their pick this year in the 1st round. And hopefully they can piece this thing together and start winning some games.
Hey, a related question to Curtis's about the Seahawks being kind of trying to lean as much as they can to the run. When I'm thinking back to like the 2017-18 version of the Seahawks, they were constantly critiqued for wanting to run the ball too much, and it made sense because we were seeing an explosion in pass games all over the league, right? You saw devaluation of running backs. You saw the Rams under Sean McVay take off. Granted, Todd Gurley was part of that, but I digress. And then last year, we saw a career year from Saquon. We saw Derrick Henry take off with the Ravens. And I'm finding, Isaiah, that there are 2 schools of thought with this. Either you're someone who thinks, oh, well, that's Derrick Henry, that's Saquon, they're different. Or you're someone who thinks, no, I think the league is kind of circling back and run games are mattering a bit more and teams are going to have to combat that. Where do you fall?
You know what? I've always been the one who loves to have a solid game because I feel like if you can control the line of scrimmage, you control the game. And I think there is no greater comparison to that than what we just saw in this year's Super Bowl. Going into the Super Bowl, I had no doubt in my mind that Philadelphia was going to win because Philadelphia had by far the best guys in the trenches. So when you start looking at where this game of football is actually played, if you win the trenches, you control not only the offensive line, but you control the defensive line. And as if you have a solid O-line, I can run the ball when I want to, and I can pass the ball when I want to. Right? It doesn't matter how many guys you have at the receiver position. If I can't protect, then I don't have time to get these guys the ball in their hand. If I can't get the ball in their hand, then there's no point even having these guys, which is why you saw you saw Seattle kind of go away from some of the guys that have been tried and true in Seattle for some years. Lockett, DK, those guys have been big play guys for the Seahawks for a number of years. But if you don't have time to get them the ball, then what's the point?
Was there a team that either in the first round or kind of into the second just kind of had you scratching your head? Like you were trying, you know what I mean? Like last year's Falcons where we were like, Michael Penix? Like was there, all love to Michael Penix Jr., but was there a team that kind of had you going, what's their plan here?
You know what? There wasn't anybody that popped off the list this year. And I think mainly because this year, I hate saying this, but this was not a particularly deep draft.
Yeah.
You start talking about first-round talent,
yeah.
right? So all the guys that you needed to get, you had to go get them, right? Like it wasn't like, okay, well, hey, whatever we have at number 20 is going to be, we'll take it because it's best available. No, I was like, if you had a guy that you really like, you better go grab him because he's not going to be there by the time that you're picking, and you don't want to quote unquote overpay for somebody. So. There wasn't any team in particular this year. I think there was a team that I was pleasantly surprised by, and that was Jacksonville and what they did to go get their guy in Travis Hunter. It's a bold move, but like I just said, when there's a lack of first-round talent and you have a dynamic player, there's only so many guys that come around like that. And if you really have them high on your board, then do what you got to do to go get them.
Isaiah, one team that did make a pretty splashy draft pick in that first round was Vegas, taking Ashton Jeanty at number 6 overall. What have you made of the Raiders offseason under Pete Carroll? Trading for Geno Smith, you add Ashton Jeanty. It's a stacked AFC West. I don't know if anybody's going to be knocking off Kansas City anytime soon for first place, but how do you see them stacking up with L.A. and with Denver?
First of all, that was a gift to be able to have Jeanty sitting there waiting on them. That's absolutely insane for Jeanty to just fall into your lap when you need a running back. So that was awesome for Coach Carroll and the rest of the Raiders crew down there. In terms of trading for Geno, I think there's something to be said about having familiarity as a head coach, trying to start something new with a new organization and having your guy, having a guy that you're not having to coach up and not having to train up and not have to worry about, is he going to be the leader? And I think that's what was more important to Pete Carroll, even more so than the play on the field from Geno. I think he wanted to have somebody that can literally just grab the bull by the horns and just go with it, know his philosophy, know his culture, and help these guys really adapt to it as quickly as possible. And when you start talking about putting Jeanty on the field, with a quarterback who has the dual threat ability as Geno, who has the knowledge as Geno. When you talk about Brock Bowers sitting up there with Jeanty, and do you want to load the box? If you load the box, and you're probably putting a safety on Bowers, well, good luck. They got some options down there, and I really think that they have a great foundation in terms of the direction that they're trying to go.
Catch 'em on Good Morning Football. It's Isaiah Stanback. Isaiah, you are the best. Thank you so much for taking the time, man. We always appreciate it.
Thanks, Isaiah.
I always love being on with y'all. Y'all be good.